which you go in with a hypothesis as to why a behavior is occurring, and you're going to actually manipulate situations. You're going to introduce antecedents that you think are going to occasion the behavior and ones that you think won't. And you're going to take data and see what actually happens to determine if that's the function, and then compare what your data looks like in these different antecedent situations. However, it's not realistic for all behaviors in all settings because it has to be a very controlled setting. And also, if the person's engaging in pretty severe behavior, you're not going to want to go in and provoke it just so you can take the data and say, aha, I knew that was the function. And now I know for sure because I have my data. Meanwhile, his legs red, his head's bleeding when interviews, through observations, through records reviews, looking at incident reports, all of those things you can put together a pretty clear picture to do a complete. Is really a main thing to take from this. In order to create an intervention plan, you need to know why the child's engaging in the behavior. You want to understand the behavior from the person's point of view, not just sort of checking those four main functions, or not just saying, well, they're doing it on purpose, or they're just bad, or they're just defiant or oppositional. You really kind of want to know from their perspective, why are they doing this? So again, a child who's screaming to communicate they're in pain would be given a very different intervention than a child who screams in order to gain attention from their family. And I also find that attention is often overused as an explanation, leading to sort of potential overuse of ignoring as a behavior plan. So one, it's going to sometimes cause problems when you ignore behavior. It'll escalate. The person wants attention. Maybe there's a more appropriate way we can help them get attention, because it's not necessarily an inappropriate thing to want. I mean, we all want attention from other people. Maybe they're not doing it in the right way or in the right situations, but let's help them find a more appropriate way to get attention, rather than just saying, well, that's for attention, so we're not going to pay attention to it and we'll go away. So behavior plans should also include what we call a replacement skill. So this is also why you need to know the function. So is there something appropriate that the child or individual can do instead of the inappropriate behavior that'll serve the same purpose? So using that same example, if the child who screams to communicate pain, well, can we teach them a more appropriate way to express pain, such as using verbal language, signs, or pictures? Similarly, the child who screamed to get attention would be taught appropriate ways of gaining attention, such as asking someone to play, or even just as simple as patting someone on the arm. I've taught a lot of nonverbal kids to just pat somebody on the arm, say I want attention, versus screaming or doing something inappropriate, or just learning how to say, hey mom. So take-home message is that behavior is communication. So again, you look at what is the person trying to communicate with their behavior. And you really, really have to know the function of a behavior to come up with an appropriate plan. I'm asked time and time again, child is doing behavior X, what should I do? People look at me for an answer thinking that I'm just going to know, well, tantrum equals do this. Banging their head equals do this. Not getting on the bus equals do this. But it's not that simple, because I need to know why. Why is the person banging their head? Why aren't they getting on the bus if I'm going to be able to come up with an effective intervention plan? And I just wanted to share a fun thing I learned about recently. It's an app for iPhones, and I don't know if you can get it on other devices as well, called iRewards. And it's this great system where you can set up giving someone stars, and then you can set up different chores or tasks or responsibilities or behaviors, give them a star, and then they can cash out. You can set up different prizes, and stars are in different amounts of things, which is really nice, because I think that the technology helps a lot of individuals too, because I know my son, we were trying to set up an allowance system for him to do chores, and it wasn't working. I mean, he could care less about $2 a week. He has enough stuff. He just sort of hoarded the money. It was kind of meaningless, not effective for them. So if you give a child a cookie and they don't increase cleaning their room, then that was just a reward, not a reinforcer. It really depends on how much value the item has for the individual and how difficult the behavior that you're trying to increase is for the person to complete. Grandfather told a story once of how his child was bored and he didn't want to, or his grandchild was bored and he didn't want to complete tasks anymore. And his consultant just said, well, think about it. If somebody asked you to stack blocks all day for $1 million, you'd probably do it. Of course I would. So that pay would be enough for that report. So it's really saying, well, I need to find what's going to be motivating enough for this individual to complete this task, whether it's boring, whether it's tiresome, whether it's frustrating, whatever it is, what payoff will be big enough that they're going to be willing to complete this task. And then you'll have
your reinforcer. So there are different types of reinforcement. Primary reinforcers, which are things like sleep, which sounds strange, but anyone who's a parent probably knows that how reinforcement
Reinforcement has to come immediately after the behavior. So we'll talk later about systems in which you might not give the big reinforcer right after, but you have to give some level of feedback. So token economy system, things where you would give the sticker immediately, and then later they can trade stickers in for other things that are reinforcing, but the sticker came immediately. Again, they have to be valuable. One way to achieve this is make it only available through engaging in the behavior you want to see. And sometimes this is challenging, especially if you don't have control over the person's reinforcers. Like if you can say, well, we'll give you 10 minutes of computer time at the end of the day if you behave, and it would be valuable except the fact that they go home and they have unlimited access to the computer. And that's not going to be very valuable. Or you're going to offer them a soda, but they have unlimited access. Sometimes you have to be really creative in the things that you offer if you want to try and keep them exclusive. Another reason why you want parents and caregivers and everyone involved in a plan so you can avoid those things. Also, you might want to have more than one reinforcer available so you don't see satiation occur, which again is why when we worked with young kids with autism, when we were using food as reinforcers, we would take the M&Ms and cut them in 4. So it was just a tiny, tiny little bit so they couldn't satiate on them. By the way, if you press on an M&M with your thumb perfectly, it'll break perfectly into 4 if you ever do that. It's a technique I learned. Also, it has to be worth the effort. We talked about this. So if I'm asking, somebody to set the table and I give them a quarter of an M&M, that may not be worth it to them. But if I'm saying, tell me the color of this cup, then that might be worth it to them. Just think about things that are reinforcers for you. Say coffee would be a big reinforcer for me. Chocolate would be a big reinforcer for me. Shoes, there's all kinds of things that people can set up. But it'd be hard for people to make them exclusive to their programs because obviously I'm an adult and I have access to all these things on my own. So sometimes it's also challenging when you're working with adults. Like, is it really, are older individuals where you kind of think, would it be fair to withhold it? Would it be fair to tell a 30-year-old, you can only have coffee if you've done your chores today. Maybe it's not really a reasonable thing. That's just something they want in their life. Think about things that can be used as reinforcers for your child or your student. And again, this is where you want to think outside of the box, because sometimes those common things aren't going to be reinforcing for everyone. And what would be the most effective reinforcer for your student? How could you make that reinforcer more valuable? So again, making sure it's not available in other means or changing it. So if it is a prize box, make sure that every once in a while, at least, they're going to get something really neat out of that prize box. It's not always just going to be the 99-cent store, Oriental Trading Company, little fuzzy guy or whatever happens to be in the prize box. Do like a pick a card program or a surprise box where the person will say they wanted a $50 gift card to the mall. Well, you're going to give them a reinforcer daily, so they can't have a $50 gift card to the mall every day unless, again, they're independently wealthy and have all kinds of funds, and then again, they might satiate on that. So what you do is you set up a system of cards where one might be a trip to Subway, one might be, French fries at McDonald's, one might be, 50 cents, and you have a whole bunch, but then one of them in there is that $50 gift card to the mall, and they get to pick one of those cards without seeing it. So every time there is the chance they're going to get that. Oftentimes that can be a motivator for somebody. It's like gambling. You keep putting your coins in a slot because at one point you might get the big payout. So it's worth it to me to keep doing this because at one point I might get that $50 gift card to the mall. Or if it's a prize box, one thing's going to be a really cool prize. Everything's wrapped so I can't tell what it is. But if I pull it out, I might get that really cool thing this time. Even if the rest of the time I get my little pencil topper or whatever, what the case may be. So you kind of keep it fun. And again, you can use technology. A lot of people are really into technology, so access to the iPad for a certain period of time. Okay, so in terms of removing reinforcement, so let's say we realize that the behavior really is serving the function of attention. So up until today, attention's been the reinforcer for this behavior. And we say, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to stop giving attention for engaging in this behavior. And this is what's known as extinction, is when you withhold reinforcement for something that's previously been reinforced. So when you first take away reinforcement for something, the behavior is going to temporarily increase before it decreases. Because the person's going to try really hard to get that reinforcer. So, if you don't get something from the vending machine, usually if you kick it, it works. Eventually you're gonna be kicking it, pushing it over, doing all kinds of things. So it's gonna get worse before it gets better. It's gonna be an extinction first.